Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of Quizzing Cameron, where I answer your management and leadership questions in a practical and simple way. No buzzwords, no theory here, just straightforward advice from my 20 plus years of experience. If you have any questions that come up while you're watching this, feel free to drop those down below the video in the replies, and I will go ahead and put those on another episode of Quizzing Cameron. I do answer every single question that is submitted, so it will eventually show up. But let's dive right in. Our first question comes from Angela, and it is, sometimes you need to manage your manager above you. Mine is a dominant, hot-headed bull. And I appreciate the clarity with which you gave us the description, Angela. And it's something that I've always done, is actually manage my boss. And it's not done from any sort of scheming way or anything like that. I just want to make sure that they are getting the positive information as well as the negative information, and I'm being as transparent as possible. And so I will adjust to their moods. I will see that they're getting certain information if they're a little bit heavy on positive, negative, no feedback, that sort of thing. So I encourage actually everybody to manage their boss as well. In your case, Angela, you actually already know what the issue is, and so you have the ability to plan around it, and you have to understand your boss to be able to manage them. So that's the positive to this. So what I recommend in this case is that you go with the bull. To say it this way is, bulls, those hot-headed individuals, they feed off of defensiveness and resistance. So what you want to do is you actually want to go with that. You want to be more likely to give way to what their opinion on a situation is. You want to go with their direction on it. You want to actually be supportive of it. That's a great idea. Should start to enter your vocabulary. And that way they don't see you as a point of resistance. Perhaps they move on to somebody else for a targeting of their aggressiveness. But the other thing that you do is, I know that you mentioned in there that there's a favoritism towards others in regards to responsibilities. And in the case of this sort of dominant and favorite behavior, what you want to do is try to meet them one-on-one. It's easier for them to give you more responsibility and more tasks if there isn't anybody else in the room to give it to. So try to stick with the one-on-one communication when you're bringing ideas up, so that those ideas aren't taken to somebody else if you're the one that wants to really run with that. That's a tough spot. It's tough to deal with that sort of hot-headedness. Sometimes you have to just duck for cover. Other times you bring it up on a one-on-one basis, but try not to be too resistant. That's the thing that hot-headedness really tries to feed off of is that. So best of luck, Angela. That's a tough situation. Our next question comes from Pauline, and it is, what do you do if your manager is not helpful? The manager seems to be in competition with their staff rather than helping them. And that's an interesting spot. Some of us would wish that our manager would be in competition and helping out with the workload that's out there. But I'm going to try something out of left field on this one, and that is actually play the role for them that you should be playing. And that is, you should be helping them with the big ideas that they have. Now, if they're diving into the minutia a little bit, you can still play that helpful role. So it may be that they're doing a task that you could very easily do for yourself, and they're trying to do it better than you. So instead of being in competition with them, try to help them do that even better. And that's kind of the best way to tackle it a little bit, is not acknowledge the competition, try to subvert it, play the role that you're supposed to play, maybe try a little bit more humility in what you do. That can be a little bit helpful in these sort of situations, but it's tough when a manager actually wants to still play in the sandbox a little bit with you and try to be competitive with you in that regard. Just don't acknowledge it. Support them the way that you would support a boss who's dealing with big things, and exercise that humility. Don't play into that sort of competitiveness. Play your role that you should be playing in supporting your leader. Our next question comes from Nahla, and it's, how do you handle a very qualified employee who is always willing to leave the place for a better salary? And that's a reality. I I hope to actually have a whole bunch of employees that I can mentor and that I can develop so that they do either leave the department and stay within the organization, or even if they happen to leave the organization and move onward and upward. I'm trying to build people up wherever possible. And the way you combat money in particular is you combat it with the experience. You make the experience of being an employee in your department interesting. You challenge them. You ask them what it is that they want to learn, how they want to grow. You make it so that they don't want to leave because it's going to hurt their career development to leave under your particular leadership. And you make the environment itself fun. You make the environment competitive. That's why so many Silicon Valley companies have chefs and massages and all of the other crazy things you hear about in Google and Facebook and that sort of thing, is because they are in competition for talent. And they want to put that best foot forward. They don't want anybody to actually leave the company to go elsewhere for more money or anything else. And so the way you combat that, the experience that you give them, make sure you're doing your team building activities, make sure you're making the work fun, you're making it interesting, and you're showing that the career development that they want can best actually be had in your department, in your organization. The last thing that I want to mention on this is to actually look for it in the interview. I don't hold it against anybody necessarily when I'm taking a look at their job, their resume, and they've moved to a different position every single year for the last 10 years. I try not to hold it against them, but it is going to be something that I'm going to be wary of, and I'm going to look to ask about the reasons that they moved from a particular job to a particular job. Because sometimes what you have is you have a very qualified employee who is never happy in whatever position that they're in, and never happy with whatever company that they're in. And it is not a good investment to train somebody to bring them up to speed only to have them leave after a year, just like they did on their prior 5 jobs. So tackle it in the interview. Ask them a tough question about that if you need to, and be honest. I've been honest with people that have sat across from me in interviews, and I said, I look at your job experience and I see 5 different jobs over the past 4 years. Can you explain why it is that you've been jumping from those jobs, and why it is that you think that you will be staying in this job for 2+ years? And so you can be transparent and hard-hitting with them if it's something that you were concerned about. So that's my best advice, and all the best of luck. Our next question comes from Mandy, and it's, how do you deal with managers who have favorite little cliques? And I'm sorry you're in this position. Obviously, you know, this is a leader that's not demonstrating the sort of leadership qualities that we all hope to demonstrate as leaders. And you know, this is an opportunity that you have to develop your leadership capabilities outside of that clique. Usually, when leaders have their favorite little cliques, they tend to spend the most time with those particular individuals. Those are the people that get the coaching, those are the people that get the direction, what have you, and so there tends to be a vacuum elsewhere. And this is an opportunity for you to actually, you know, demonstrate some leadership, tie it to a shared, you know, shared vision for excellence within your department or your organization, and kind of rally the troops that are out there. You're not the only one that's feeling this, I'm sure. And so you can actually build up your own team. I won't use the term clique, but build up the team that's out, that's not getting the sort of leadership that you want from your leader, and develop it that way so it can become something that's actually a positive from your career development standpoint. But you can create your own team. Everybody can be their own leader within the organization. So go ahead, step up, bring the team together. Everybody has that shared experience of not necessarily being a part of that clique, but they have that shared vision for excellence, I'm sure, within the department. To be a little bit more direct in regards to the clique, if you feel like that's not necessarily the course of action that you want to take as far as developing the team is concerned, the only way into a clique is usually to be invited, is the reality of it. And so if there's one particular member of that clique who you can befriend and you can spend some more time with, that might get you a little bit more exposure to your leader. It seems a little devious and scheming to do so, but if that's the reality that you're in, Pick somebody that you do have a reasonably good relationship with, and that can be your entryway into the clique and into your leader's time, for lack of a better word. So thank you for the question, Mandy. Our next question comes from Hemant, and it's, how do you handle jealousy in the workplace? And we're all human, so we all feel it. I feel it in my job. And one thing I want to say about jealousy is 90+% of the time, the thing that we are jealous about for someone is not actually the place. We not actually something that is a reality, and that is, we feel like they get cut more slack than we get cut from the leadership. We feel like they have it easier than somebody else has. And most of the time, that is not the case. Most of the time, they feel the same thing about you. You know, the accounting department doesn't feel like they get the attention that the marketing department gets, and the marketing department thinks that they don't get the attention that the accounting department gets, that sort of thing. So a lot of these reasons for jealousy don't actually exist. And so that, my big advice in a jealous environment is to help others understand what it is that you're going through. And I don't mean starting a bitch session as to how, you know, tough that you've got it in your particular department, or how tough you have it in this, you know, cubicle area of your department, but help them to understand what it is that you do. And it doesn't mean that you talk about only the negative things. You can talk about the positive things, but help them to understand. And if you're feeling jealous about some other area, try to find out what it is that they deal with, the challenges that they face, the tough parts, the successes that they have, that sort of thing. Jealousy tends to be a lack of understanding and a lack of communication. So what you want to do is you want to bridge that gap. So that's the best way. Best of luck to you. Khen Paz actually have our last question for the day, and it's, how do you manage in a multinational team where most of them are having ego problems? The manager has pitted the experienced staff with the young staff and along nationalist lines. Again, a really good question, one that we deal with in a lot of the countries where I've got fans, it's managers from all over the world. And what you want to do is you want to tackle that ego by acknowledging the strength. So you don't want to pick something out of thin air. Where, you know, that you say that they're great, oh, you're great at communicating or whatever, when, you know, they have the door closed all the time. But pick a strength that they actually have and acknowledge it. And that breaks down the defensiveness between the two particular teams if you acknowledge that the other team happens to be better. If you're talking about experienced staff versus young staff, they have more, the experienced staff has more wisdom in the particular area than the young staff does, and the new and inexperienced staff. It's just a fact, and you have to acknowledge that. And what you're looking for is you're looking for that quid pro quo, that give and take, where they acknowledge that you have brand new ideas that they haven't even thought of. So acknowledge first what their strength is, and then they can hopefully open up a little bit where you can find some common ground to work on. And so in that sort of environment, you'd say, I've got a new idea, but I want to run it by you because you all have the experience to know whether this is going to work out and what's going to work. I thought about this, this, and this. What are your thoughts on that? And that's a way to start opening up and creating that bridge where you can start working on things together. It is not, especially if the leader is setting the tone for this, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that's going to take time. As many of these things that I talk about, it takes time and perseverance. Things don't turn around on a dime like that. So you're going to have to keep at it. You're going to have to figure out what works. Find some allies that are on the other side that are a little bit more open. Find some ways that you can work on things together. That creates that common ground that you can build from. So that does it for today. Again, if you have any questions that you want to ask, go ahead and drop those down in the replies. I'll get them in the queue to be answered in a future episode. But for now, I'm Cameron, and I'm signing off from sunny Las Vegas. Thanks.